I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Vanya with Southwest Airlines. I'll turn it over to Vanya. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Vanya, and it rhymes with lasagna. That means I've spoken to you so far this week. That's awesome. Well, welcome back, and welcome if I haven't met you yet. I try to come back at least once a semester to just share my testimony and share and tailor a message to each of the classroom visits that I go to. And today, there is no classroom, there is no subject, and so I am really representing myself and not my employer. I am here to open up and be vulnerable and encourage you to do the same. My name is Vanya, once again, and I live in Dallas, Texas. I graduated UND in 2016 with the aviation management major. I have my commercial multi, and I have not flown since my last check ride here out of Grand Forks. I have flown, I've had controls, I've shared, but I haven't actually put anything in the logbook. I'm way past my biannual, and I could not be more content about it. Because I recognized during my internship that I did not have a passion of flying in the flight deck. I had a passion for aviation, and at that time at UND we didn't have as many options as we do now, and it's coming from the board meeting. It's exciting to see all the future opportunities that UND is going to have for their students as well. So I advocate for non-flying pilot careers. You just had a great representation of someone from the corporate flying, and I think they had great examples of the differences between being in the airline and flying corporate. Here, you can still be in the airline, you can still sit in the flight deck, but you get to go home every night. You get to spend all your free time however you want to, because you're not limited on any bottle to throttle, you're not limited to minimum crew rest, and once you land in a city, because you want to travel there, you get to do whatever you want because you're not exhausted from working a full shift. So the picture on the left-hand side with me pre-beard is my first flight as a ExpressJet intern. I was sitting in the flight deck and I recognized the conversation that the captain and the FO were having. And then I learned the pattern. Day one is, tell me about your wife and kids. Day two is, let me tell you the best dry rub spice recipe for your next barbecue. And day three is, let's get home now. And this is what I'm going to do once I get home. And then 4 days later, you get to repeat that conversation with someone new. And you just never get to see that same person again. And for me, it's important to foster relationships. I have a passion for people as well. And if I'm not able to have meaningful relationships, I'm horrible at this small talk. I have anxiety going to the Sama's social this afternoon because I don't really know anyone, and I'm only going to care about the relationships that I foster. So if we don't make a connection, if there's not intention meeting someone tonight and helping them with their career, then I don't know why I'm going. So I'm trying to, pump myself up with a mission. I'm going there to connect and to network and to help someone. That's my goal. And I'm just not able to do that with quick interactions within the flight deck. If we're flying 4 legs and then we go to the hotel and then we sleep, it doesn't really matter what city you're flying to. It doesn't matter if that city is 400 miles away or 4,000 miles away, because I'll be tired because I just finished work. And then I come back and I do the same thing the next day. I found that knowledge of aviating can be used in so many different ways though. And there is a need for that in the headquarters of every single operation, whether it's a mom and pop shop and it's a tour guiding agency, or it is a operator like Delta and Southwest. You can see all of these different departments that that require some sort of aviating experience, whether it is who's going to represent, the relationship and the liaison between the operator and Jeppesen. If one of those nav charts is wrong, how are we going to fix it? Pilots are too busy flying the plane, and we need pilots to fly those planes. But we also need people with ATC background and a comfort and knowledge to represent pilots with Jeppesen, with ForeFlight, with our contractors. As we talk about network planning and we want to fly to a new airport, we need people to represent pilots to go to those airports and figure out what are their SIDS and stars like. Is there mountainous terrain? Do our policies and procedures fit the requirements needed to fly to this new station? So there are 4,000 jobs at Southwest headquarters. It's people that share the same passion for aviating but don't want to be in the flight deck. And within the flight ops department, we have 320 people dedicated to serving our pilots. And I would say about 180 of them have a pilot background knowledge, whether it's from school, or they are former aviators, or they come in from the represent air traffic control, or they have experience being an airport, being part of the airport authority. We need all of that talent and all of that knowledge and expertise to support our pilots who have a mission to get from point A to point B. My role is that of a SMS consultant. So I have a passion for safety, something I defined about my third, fourth year at UND. I then knew that I wanted to pursue safety, and I had a knack. I was able to understand concepts pretty quickly and tailor the language to the audience so they can understand it. SMS is very complicated. The FAA is very complicated. When they write out language within their AC or within their rulings, it's not written for operators, it's not written for pilots, it's written for legal. It's a legal document. And so you need someone to comprehend that, figure out why all these boxes have arrows pointing to different areas of different boxes, and then turn it into something actionable. It's not something that we remember to do and we say, just apply some SMS on it. It is now the philosophy of our company and different departments within it. So my role as an SMS consultant isn't only in the training of individuals and safety professionals to better understand SMS, but to create tools and resources like the images behind me here, so our leadership that doesn't have time to go through 3 days of training to quickly understand the risk in their operation, or to quickly understand, is there an increasing trend that needs to be addressed? Is there some part of the aircraft that we've been targeting that is not meeting our expectations? One of the projects that I get to work on, or that I've worked on, is pretty simple. We had aircraft that were diverting after passengers smoked in the lab. Are you allowed to smoke in the lab? Hey class, are you allowed to smoke in the lab? No. Do we make an announcement on every flight? Yeah. Do people smoke in the lab? Every week. Every week. And those smoke detectors, so what we found is that our crews ended up sometimes diverting. And it's just that confusion of, well, we know that cigarette is out. Or perhaps that smoke detector isn't just looking for smoke, but it's looking for haze. So if you've got cologne and you want to do your hair or whatever and hairspray it, or body spray or whatever, that's going to trigger the lavatory smoke alarm. And we found that these rules were written 30 years ago, and they didn't really accommodate that technology or those other circumstances. You cannot verify that there is no, so for a cigarette, for example, we can see that the cigarette is extinguished and there is no fire, right? And so we can comfortably say, let's continue the flight. But for hairspray or something like that, we might not have seen the passenger walk out of the lab, so we don't know who it was. And then we have the lavatory smoke alarm going off, and then we go through and we can't find a cigarette butt, and we can't find a source that would have triggered the lavatory smoke alarm, but it smells like cologne. Is that enough for you to say, let's continue the flight? There is no fear of fire. But the smoke alarm's going off. So there is that confusion. Our checklist didn't really have a good setup for our crews, and it ended up being an operational and a safety concern. Our crews were now in emergency mode. So we went through our SMS process, in something called a system assessment, where we identified the problem and we collected all the data. We didn't just look at the flight ops manual and the Boeing manual of how the lavatory smoke alarm works, but we also looked at the flight attendant manual to see what are they trained to look for and what sort of outs do they have. We identified that there were gaps between the flight attendant and the pilot manual as well. For example, the flight attendants had a portion of their manual saying that if the pilot tells you to reset the smoke detector, go for it. But the pilots never had anything to tell the flight attendants, go ahead and reset the smoke detector. They were never given that out. So as these events come up, we can identify the root cause, we can go through leadership and they say, yep, let's fix it. And they love SMS because it has accountability. Someone's name is now on fixing it. And then once you fix it, then it goes to our safety assurance process, because you have to monitor and make sure that your fix actually fixed the problem. You can't just say, we're fixing it, and then we're going to go focus on something else. So we have, again, SMS has accountability. We have monthly updates to say, how are we doing operationally, and how are we doing with these new safety risk controls that we published. What helps me with my occupation is one of your 7 fundamental functions of your health and wellness. What helps me within my occupation is the fact that I can use my intelligence. I know my strengths. Who's heard of Myers-Briggs? Introvert, extrovert. Who knows their Myers-Briggs? I would advise you, while you're on campus at UND and while it's free, go for it. For me, another test that you can do is the Clifton Strength Finders. And if you're going to go in a more corporate world and you're going to do anything that might be outside of the flight deck, even if you're a project pilot, you're flying for 2 weeks and you're in the office for 2 weeks, the corporate world, the people department, the HRs of different companies, including Target, 3M, so not just aviation, are moving towards Clifton Strength Finders. And the idea is that you can identify your strengths. There are 34 different strengths, and it will rank them from your greatest strength to perhaps your least greatest strength. And the idea is that these are my greatest strengths, so no longer is my boss going to say, these are where you fail, be better. If I'm naturally write with my right hand, why should my boss want me to be better at writing with my left? Let's use the strengths that I have to overcome any of the gaps that I would have with my left hand. So therefore, my top strengths are relator. And it's pretty cool that, within the example that I just shared with the lavatory smoke alarm, I needed that strength of relator to understand the perception of flight attendants, to understand the perception from Boeing of why a lavatory smoke alarm is designed the way that it is. As a relator, it doesn't mean that you can't relate to people. It just means that it's easier for me to understand and empathize with another person's perspective. It's easy for me to understand the SMS that the FAA is trying to deliver. Strategic. It doesn't mean that I think future vision, but it just means that it's easier for me to understand how my actions can get me to my goals. Especially blends in with relator, that I can tailor my performance to, I can tailor my actions to get the performance that I'm seeking, especially if they affect other people. Significance. It comes easier to me to see the value in other people or their actions or in anything. People might say that, oh, you always just find the positivity in everything. And I'm not walking around hopping with a smile on my face at all times. But it's easier for me to see the value or that positivity than it might be for someone else. And so that's why I might call it out. That's perhaps why I have a passion of helping people and mentoring students, getting them to their careers, because I can see their significance before they can, or before others do. As an achiever, I know where the goal is. It's easy for me to see the goal, and I want to exceed it. And others may struggle seeing the goal itself. so it comes easier to me. Lastly, as an includer, I'm generally attracted to the quiet person in the room because I foster those relationships. I want to know your story. I'm walking outside of where I was told I'm not allowed to walk. I value learning their story. I want to see the significance within your story. And because of all of that, my strengths have helped me become a consultant because I can foster those relationships of different people in the room. These might not be the greatest strengths that I would need in the flight deck. So as you have these resources on campus, I highly advise you to just find those words that help define the thoughts that you already have for yourself. I'm not saying that these 5 things define me. I would never do that. But I was already explaining some of the things that I have a passion for, and it's cool that I can now use a word that best describes what I feel. When I'm not working, I travel. Pretty simple. I have an apartment in Dallas, Texas. I rent it out on the days that I'm not there. In the month of April, I'm there only 6 nights. That's already passed. So I've been living off of a giant suitcase for the last 2 weeks and then for the next 2 weeks because I love to jam-pack my schedule and travel and make the most of my time. I volunteer with the Minnesota Boy Choir, so I often find myself from Dallas traveling up to Minnesota. I'll be with them this weekend preparing for their tour to Ireland in June. I love giving back to the organization that raised me into the gentleman I am today. I also have a passion for cats, not dogs, and so if ever we have a group of employees that help transport animals using their standby privileges from a place where the pet is to wherever their foster family is going to be. That's a ton of fun. This is the world map of where I've traveled since I've been with the airlines. Earlier this year, one of the 45 flights that I had was traveling to Guam, which was pretty great. And then just last week, I kid you not, just last week, I was in South Korea looking into North Korea, seeing how people are farming and going to school. That's pretty awesome. The best part, I got to relax on the flight there. I did it on my own terms. I only have to go into the office 50% of the time now. That is the new policy at Southwest Airlines. It's not the temporary post-COVID policy. That is now the new policy at Southwest Airlines. So Tuesday, Wednesdays, I'm in the office, and then maybe a third day once in a while. I can guarantee you as soon as I can, I'll be out of there, going to awesome places, and then working remotely. If that means working from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. so I can go look at North Korea, I will, because why not? Until I get a cat of my own, then I'll stay in Dallas, but I've got time. What helps, so that's kind of the social aspect of my life and one of those fundamental functions of the health and wellness. To keep my life balanced, though, I need to be conscious of my environment. And environment not only talks about your physical environment and do I go recycle plastics and glasses, but how do I manage my time and who do I surround myself with? I have a color-coded schedule which lists every single meeting and tells me where I'm going to fly and all that jazz because I am really good at time management because I want to do a lot with my time. I also recognize when I try to look at my relationships, who am I surrounding myself by? If I look around the room and I ask myself, am I the smartest person in the room? As soon as I think yes, I either need to leave that room or I need to adjust my thoughts. If at work I ever think, am I the smartest person in the room, I am no longer meeting my own expectations of how I want to be in the workplace because I'm not learning. I have automatically closed the doors of anyone's input. And I have a very confident personality. So that is something I have to actively ask myself in meetings. Am I giving back? That's very important to me. I was in a position in my childhood where I didn't have much. I was invited to leave my home at the age of 14. So since the age of 14, I was independent. trying to find places to sleep and eat. And I'm in a much better position now, and I can only be thankful for all the things that helped me get to where I am. So I practice gratitude, and I give back. Am I using my voice? So often it can be tailored by social media or with the news that I might fall under someone else's voice. Or especially as we're going through college or any social setting, we may just want to agree with someone and follow their voice. Well, if you spend your time speaking for someone else, who's going to speak for you? If you're going to live your life as someone else, who's going to live yours? So stay true to your character, be humble, and be confident with your voice. Equal consideration or equal treatment, this is one of the best things that I've learned at work, especially with emergency response, but I use it a lot within my friendships. And that's perhaps the last speaker said that all Russians are very stoic. I couldn't agree more. That being said, though, we might come off with a cold, hard shell. But what I've learned is that equal treatment is absolutely impossible, and it's not fair to anyone. Never offer equal treatment. But what I can be confident about and what I can commit to is offering equal consideration. And I owe any of my friends, family, or anyone I meet equal consideration. On the spiritual side, I kind of mentioned it, I practice gratitude. I was raised Russian Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox, and whenever I'm with my family, I will join them to church. But I also learned throughout the years that with positive psychology, it's been studied that happiness is a choice. And to make that choice, you need to practice gratitude. How I practice gratitude is by writing notes saying thank you. I might send a postcard after every SAMA conference fair. During my UND career, I would pick 3 or 4 employers and I would just shoot them a note saying thank you. Not asking for anything, just practicing gratitude. That way, in 3 months or 3 years, when I shoot them an email, they're more likely to help me out. That is just the good vibes I give out to the world, and the world generally gives me good vibes back. The harder I work, the luckier I get. I could not agree with that more. And part of that hard work is spending time saying thank you. On the physical side, talked about how I use a color-coded schedule, and I'm very conscious of how I spend my time. I clearly do not work out. Should I? Yes. Have counselors told me that my mental health would be greater if I do? Absolutely. Have I done anything about it? No. But I love eating. And so with that, I need to be conscious about what I eat. I am not too nice to my body because I run at 100% a lot of the time. So I need to manage all my intake. And so I need to be conscious with what I eat. I also recognize, and I work with the fatigue risk management program, which has helped me identify how even more important it is to manage my sleep and my rest. Also knowing that I'm an introvert that knows how to act like an extrovert is important for me. Throughout this week, as I've been extroverted talking to students, I would then go to the hotel and just rest in my lonesome self for 2 hours before going out and being social again. It's important to me to balance that. With fatigue, we all know fatigue is caused by high workload, short rest, inadequate health and fitness levels, and alcohol. All of those things are in my life. I'm sure all of those things are in your life as well, and it's how we manage them. I need to be conscious that, hey, I'm gonna have short rest today and tomorrow, so on the 3rd day, I'm not gonna drink, and I'm gonna go to bed early. That way, I'm setting myself up for success in the future. We can look out for each other with impaired problem solving, altered perception of risk, negative moods, and impaired memory. If you're a CFI or if you're with a friend who you are worried about being fatigued and they're being short with you, it does not mean that you did something socially to offend them. It could be an easy question of, hey, are you getting the rest that you need? Altered perception of risk we hear a lot, but I want to recognize the fact that if you ask someone who's intoxicated or you ask someone who's fatigued, they will be able to tell you exactly what the risk is. They understand the risk. The question isn't not recognizing the risk that they're up against, it's the fact that they are more willing to accept it and then pursue. Same thing with those that are intoxicated. It's hard to tell how intoxicated you are in the moment, but it's easier for someone else to identify. Same thing with fatigue. You cannot measure your own fatiguenicity. It's the technical term. You'll learn it as you graduate. So therefore, as a friend, be a friend and call your peers out if you see any of these symptoms for fatigue. So physical wellness doesn't just need to be working out, but it's all about the intake and how you manage that time, and are you being good to your physical well-being. These 7 fundamental functions of your health and wellness would be in a balance, and that supports your everyday life. Now, I talked about 6. Who knows about 1 that's on the board that I have not mentioned? I'm so glad everyone's paying attention.
It's just hard to read.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, you're a pilot. It isn't very hard to read, actually. That's true. The one I didn't mention was emotional. That's the hardest one for me. Consciously, that's just the hardest one for me. And so I needed tools and resources at UND that I got at UND to help me with my emotional health and wellness so I can have a balanced lifestyle. One of the best things that my counselor told me was love yourself as you love others. Sorry, love others as you love yourself. And what that told me is that if I don't love myself, and I love to love others, clearly, I have a passion for people and their successes. And so something that I got away from that was if I don't love myself, how can I offer anyone else that love? If that's how I know to love, then whatever I'm offering to other people is worthless. So love others as you love yourself. I lost my medical when I came to UND. I actually never got my medical because I had suicidal ideation and I was prescribed medication and automatically did not fit the criteria to receive a medical. Coming to a UND, I was shocked, right? I didn't know what to do, so I just started asking questions. I was lucky in my earlier years to learn to ask for help, and that's what I did. I asked UND faculty and the FAA, what do I do? And I learned that both of them, UND and FAA, wanted me to fly. They could not make that more clear. They want me to pursue my dreams, but we got something to take care of first. And so we worked out with a lot of back and forth, went through the whole process, and I got a restricted medical. I stopped taking the medication. I got a restricted medical that I would have to renew every single year. And it was conditional under the condition that I had to go seek counseling once every 2 weeks at the UND Counseling Center. And so through my 4 years at UND, every 2 weeks, I would go to the UND Counseling Center, and I would get my medical approved. Every year, we would go through the whole process, and they would say, you're good, but you're not there yet. You're good, you're not there yet. By the time I finished my career at UND, at that point, we had all the great paperwork, all the right testing to get me a unconditional, unrestricted medical. And now there's nothing on my medical. They're good for the full term, and that is great. However, so with that, learned a lot of skills. I learned a lot about myself, and I gained that confidence. I can be fearlessly authentic in front of you, in front of my employers and employees. And I learned those self-help measures to get me through the next many, many years. Earlier this year, I was faced with what I would say is compound mental health challenges. One thing after another seemed to happen. And I know I'm running short in time, so I'll try to be quick. But since he took an extra 15 minutes, I might too. So earlier this year, I love to travel, and I love to travel with friends. And all my friends started backing out from our travel plans because they or their friends were catching Omicron. And so I traveled to Guam alone. What was a group of 4 of us turned into me going, because we already paid for the hotel, non-refundable, so might as well someone enjoy it. And I'll tell you, that was good. It was a great trip. I did enjoy it, but it was very lonely. The island is shut down. There's no tourism. No one under the age of 60 who is a tourist. And I'm just alone in that hotel, and all I could do is go to the beach because everything is closed off. Was it relaxing? Absolutely. Was it challenging, though, mentally? A little bit more than I expected. But it's something you get over. Absolutely. And then in Guam, I drowned my phone. Does life happen? Absolutely. Is that what insurance is for? Yes. Do we kind of think like pilots as checklists and we have emergency checklists? Yeah, you just pursue that. You have your checklist, you call your insurance company, you pay a couple $100, and then 5-6 days later, as you've traveled back from Guam to Dallas without your phone, you get a new phone and everything's fine. But I was already feeling lonely, and now I was disconnected. And that was a little challenging. But that's fine. Life happens, and you have a checklist, and then within a week, I had a new phone. 2 weeks later, I was in a car accident that I caused due to poor judgment and a poor perception of risk, and it was in my father's vehicle. My father was in the country at the time, so I was just borrowing it. And does life happen? Absolutely. Do we make mistakes? Yes. Do we need to forgive ourselves? Yes. Is it easy? No. Especially if you're just kind of ready in that mindset. And there went my savings account. That I'm lucky I get paid very well, but I mean that I'm not a billionaire. I'm not Bill Gates who can get a helicopter like we talked in the last session. So, thousands of dollars, see ya, for my father, and that we don't have the best relationship, so that didn't even feel great. 2 weeks later, my aunt passed away in Moscow. It is my mother's sister, my mother in Minnesota, my father in Russia. So working on taking care of my mother and putting together a memorial and a funeral in Russia and trying to get my father and our family in Russia to attend and take care of our family there. That was just difficult. I was boarding my flight to go on a recovery vacation to Sydney with friends. I was excited. It was the first vacation we can go with friends. I was boarding that flight. I got the news, and my mom said, just come back in 4 or 5 days. And that 2-week trip to Australia got cut short. Selfishly, right? Of course I'll go to my mother if her sister passes away. But it changed my plans. Then the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. I have plenty of family on both sides, and the next 2 weeks were spent just extraction, hearing people's stories, them trying to get out of the country, and me trying to offer them as much support as possible, including my father, and safely was able to extract as many as wanted to get out, and unfortunately lost a couple friends who decided to stay and fight back. Does life happen? Yes. Does war happen? Yes. Is there a checklist for funerals? Yes. Do you know what to write on a card? Yes. Do you become super prepared and buy cards in advance because you never know if you're going to be home and you just won't need to send a card in the mail? Yes. Do I have a prescription for 1-800-Flowers passport because I want to send a bouquet of flowers immediately? Yes. That's stuff I've always thought ahead about because I work in safety. I work in emergency preparedness and response. But it's just executing all of those things that becomes challenging. 2 weeks later, a very good childhood friend of mine passes away due to substance abuse. Again, I've got a checklist. I know what to do. I know how to support the family. I was their best man in their wedding. I am there to give as much love as I can. Then I go to work, and I don't want to be at work. And then when I come home, I'm a potato on the couch watching Netflix. And I love to use my time wisely, but I'm just wasting it. I know that my attention span is getting shorter, so time to use some of those self-help measures, including walking around the lake, running around the lake that I live on. That's awesome, that helps, and it was temporary, and then I'd just be a potato on the couch. I would then have a cry spell. I love an organized calendar. I can say, yeah, next Tuesday, I can stay at home, turn on a sad movie, and get myself to cry. Let my body do what it wants to do. Practice the emotional side of my health and wellness. And I would do that, and I would do that 2 or 3 times, and I would still not be able to be motivated to get out of bed in the morning. I then knew that I wanted a short-term goal to help me with my attention span. I couldn't even read a book because I would give up. So I picked up juggling. Within 2 weeks, I learned how to juggle. I needed a short-term goal that would be absolutely meaningless, and I kind of have a little stack of those. That's how prepared I am for my mental health. These are all self-help measures I've learned to support me, but it still wasn't enough. When self-help measures aren't enough, you seek professional help. Was I diagnosed with depression? No. Was I diagnosed with anxiety? No. Was I suffering through mental health challenges? Yes. And I was able to get the support I needed. Within 2 or 3 sessions, I was great. I was able to rebound. I didn't even think to consider the fact that I'm overwhelmed because I'm living in the moment. It's so easy looking at it from the outside. Looking at it retroactively, absolutely. But I needed to get out of that funk and get some help. The cool thing about the little UND cards, now I'm way off camera, and I totally get that. My apologies, YouTube. And I probably don't even have one. But I saw those UND mental health cards that are just floating around some of those tables. And it was really cool to see all the initiatives that the John D. Odegaard Mental Health Task Force has. And on there, it lists, different symptoms of mental health. And the last one is suicide. And I was nowhere near thinking of suicide. But that's usually what, someone who hasn't thought about it too much or is looking at it from the outside, they think mental health, death. And there's so much in between. I realized that in the last month or 2, I checked off just 2 of those bullet points. And the biggest one for me was my lack of attention span. That in itself, just 2 bullet points, made me feel that much worse and helpless. Just means that I hope that if you ever look at those bullet points, it might just take 1. It might not take anything that's on there. But you don't need to be clinically depressed. You don't need the TV drama and suicide attempt for you to start seeking counseling. It is a resource that you use and then that you close that box when you don't need it anymore. But you keep it on your shelf should you ever address it again. And I welcome you to do the same. The resources include with the task force. It's really cool that we've got everything from the faculty side. You've got the dean on there. You've got Beth Bjerke, and they're figuring out the long-term vision. They're looking at research. They're looking at partnerships with other universities. I just got a full briefing on it as part of the alumni board. That's awesome. But for short term, you also have your students. And your students who are representing the task force and looking for change immediately. You do have your UND counseling services, which are available on the other side of campus. The task force is looking for a resource to be available on this side of campus, someone who has the aviation background, someone who can speak more of the pilot language and support you better. That is very exciting. But UND counseling services across the hall help me as well, so it can help you or your friends. A quote from the task force: "We are interested in making a community where mental health is discussed freely and without repercussion. I am here being vulnerable to you, sharing my testimony, and normalizing mental health." For those that are in the room that aren't struggling with mental health, and this was a very sympathetic experience, I thank you for your sympathy, and recognize the people around you, though, are struggling. So if you have that strength, then be the friend that asks the question. Be the friend who's open for the response, and be the resource to guide them when self-help measures are exhausted. I'm also very excited about the peer support program that's hopefully coming next fall. Uplift is its title, and that is essentially peer-to-peer. Your name's not anywhere. There's no notes anywhere. There's no reason the FAA would be able to find anything, nor should they care, because the FAA wants you to fly, UND wants you to fly, your peers want you to fly, and they are all there to support you. Once you have all of those 7 fundamental functions of your health and wellness balanced out, you're set for life. I don't know what everyone else, I haven't been here all day, I don't know what the other speakers told you, but I'll correct them in saying that it is me who has the best job in the world. I get to do what I love every single day. I get to come out and pursue the passions that I want to, and my employer supports me. I found the culture in which my actions and performance excel. If I was myself, my fearlessly authentic self, in a different environment, I might not be able to do all the things I want to do. And that's why my employer is the best fit for me. Do your research to find which employer is the best fit for you. Again, you have the upper game now if you're pursuing a pilot career. Don't take every open door. That's just grasping for air. Do your research and build some character. Learn more about yourself and identify where can your fearlessly authentic self excel in the airline industry. Thanks, everyone. Done? Or questions?
Any questions? Yeah, for sure.
I'll hang up front with my business card if anyone wants to reach out, ask more questions. I'm hanging out until tomorrow evening, so if you want a one-on-one or whatever, then let's chat. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time. Way to come out. This is voluntary. This is awesome, so thanks for coming out.